Well, of course, it's been 2.5, 3 days now. The whole world buzzing about what happened at the White House on Friday between President Trump and Ukrainian President Zelenskyy. And this is obviously going to be a top story to watch in the days ahead around the world as well. No one better than Rich Lowry, the editor of the National Review, joining us on 95.7 FM, KCMO Talk Radio, always streaming on the KCMO Talk Radio app. Rich, 3 days after the fact, your analysis, your reaction to Friday is what?
Wow. Still wow. We've literally seen nothing like it, and we probably never will again. Well, maybe we will sometime in the next 4 years as Trump's president, but it's...
What about next 4 days?
It's extraordinary. So I don't like the way they berated him. I wouldn't do that to a partner in public, but I think Zelenskyy was an idiot the way he handled it. Total idiot. You know, there's just one day when you got to wear a suit, when it would be a good idea to wear a suit, right? Because that would have been an instant sign of respect. Everyone said, whoa, wow, he really is taking this seriously. Trump would have appreciated it. He should know. His people should know. Trump supporters hate his tracksuits or camouflage or whatever you want to call it. And plus, he looked doubly small by the fact he wasn't wearing a suit when things got heated in there. And then all you need to do is say, I really appreciate the president's efforts for peace. I think if he pulls this off and it's a durable deal, he should get a Nobel Peace Prize. We want peace too. Now, we want to protect our interests, so I look forward to discussing that in private, but I'm so grateful for his support, the American people's support. Say it over and over and over again. And then you get out of the public meeting and you're fine. And he just couldn't do it. So I don't like the way Trump behaves and the way you need to tiptoe around him like this, but it's easy. It's really easy to do. All sorts of other foreign leaders have done it, and Zelenskyy is in a more desperate position than all those other foreign leaders, so there is more incentive to do it, and he just couldn't manage it for whatever reason.
So what's your understanding in talking to people as to why Zelenskyy had the approach that he had going into this? I mean, to make a sports analogy, it's like you're going up against a team that can't stop the pass, and you decide to run the ball all day. Like what?
Yeah.
And everyone knows that you've got to pass the ball to win, and you decide you're going to run it 50 times. Like what was he possibly thinking? What are you hearing?
So there are two deep theories. One, right, was that was an ambush by Trump and Vance, which I don't think was the case. Because, by the way, what Vance said that kind of got Zelenskyy into the confrontational mode wasn't really offensive. It was an attack on Biden. You know, Biden had tough words. They didn't get us anything. Time for diplomacy. And you just sit there. You don't need to respond to that directly the way he did. And the other deep theory is that Zelenskyy wanted to blow this up, because he didn't want to sign the rare earth deal, and he wanted to bond the Europeans to him. But that's not the way the Ukrainians were acting, afterwards. That wasn't what he was saying in private meetings beforehand. So I think he's used to being the celebrity that just everyone bows to, and that's understandable. And two, a lot of this is really offensive to him, and he really wants security guarantees. So fine, litigate that in private. Don't do it in public. So I just think it's a failure of diplomacy and political skill.
There's been a lot of social media rumors, Rich Lowry, that Zelenskyy met with Democrats or former Obama people beforehand, and like you said, he just kind of blew this thing up because that's what they told him to do. I haven't seen any real evidence of that. Have you? Do you think that's what happened, or is it just Zelenskyy going rogue and not really understanding who he's dealing with?
Well, they said that the Democratic senators, unless they're just lying about what they're saying, but I think it was a bipartisan meeting. They said he was delighted to sign the rare earths agreement. I don't think any of them said, "Oh, you're an idiot. Don't do that." And Lindsey Graham, who's the one senator you want to listen to in this circumstance, told him, don't debate. Whatever you do in the public meeting, don't take the bait. So it seems to me it was a failure on his part. And I can't believe, the ambassador, the Ukrainian ambassador, who clearly knew how badly this was going, I can't believe she didn't tell him what the right thing to do was. So I think it's on him.
Man, now when you talk about Ukrainian security in this deal, if and when a deal gets done, it seems like the best security Ukraine can have is getting a ton of, billions of dollars in investments from the United States and from Europe, because then suddenly we've all got skin in the game in the West, and Zelenskyy basically has what he wants. Does that seem to make the most sense to you?
Yeah, I think the deal makes sense for both sides. I'm not sure at the end of the day, how much we're going to end up investing in Ukrainian rare earths or how this is going to work out, but it's certainly a nice thing to have. In theory, he just seems desperate to get a security guarantee as part of it, and he's just not. Now, maybe at the end of the day he gets a security agreement when there's actually a ceasefire or some sort of peace deal, but I think even then he's not getting it from us. We're not going to guarantee to go to war with Russia over Ukraine. We're just not. Maybe the Europeans will, and we should encourage them to do that if they want to make that guarantee, but I just don't think he's getting it from us.
Rich Lowry is the editor of the National Review. New York Times reporting, Rich, that Trump is meeting with aides today to discuss canceling U.S. military aid to Ukraine. It feels to me like it's just part of this negotiation where, Trump wants to basically get to Zelenskyy and say, dude, you screwed this thing up, sign this deal. What do you think in terms of how to read into that report?
I don't know. I think they are really considering it. Now, that there are ways to do it. You just totally cut them off, or there's a workaround where the Europeans buy the stuff from us and get it to the Ukrainians anyway. But I do think there's a role for pressure on Ukraine because it's going to be hard, whether it's Zelenskyy or someone else, it's going to be hard to sign on that dotted line because whoever signs it, probably their political career is ended. There's a good chance within 3 months of signing it, Zelenskyy would be living in Miami. So, but I wouldn't do it this way. I think it's too blunt force, and I don't like vetoing UN resolutions that are offensive to Russia and all the rest of that. So it seems way overly balanced to be accommodating to Russia and harsh to Ukraine. But Trump oftentimes achieves things I'm skeptical of. So maybe that'll happen here.
So what's your sense then? If Zelenskyy signs this deal, it would be unpopular with the Ukrainians?
If he signs a peace deal, giving away part of their territory, in effect, who knows what's going to happen? They might get it back 30 years from now when there's a democratic revolution in Russia or whatever. But signing and giving that away, and if he doesn't get a security agreement from the United States, that's going to be really painful to sign on that dotted line. So I'm not talking about the rare earths. I'm talking about the ultimate deal.
But is there a sense in Ukraine that they can actually win this war if they keep fighting when they've lost hundreds of thousands of their own citizens?
When you're involved in a war, this happened in the U.S. Civil War. We've seen it in other conflicts. You don't get more moderate as the fighting goes on. You get more dug in. We've lost so many of our young men and women. That makes it even harder to compromise. So I just think this was true maybe a year or so ago. Russia's not going to win in the sense they're going to take Kyiv and topple the government the way they intended the first time. And Ukraine's not going to win in the sense of taking back their territory. So no one's going to win, so now's the time for a deal. And this is where I give Trump great credit. He forced it. All this is happening for better or worse because of him.
Now, what about, you mentioned the security agreement. Zelenskyy wants it. Trump's not really interested in that. My understanding and hearing some other folks talk about this is that would be very unusual for the United States to guarantee that in a security agreement. What is your insight on how rare that would be and if that actually makes sense to do and if that's in our interest to do?
Yeah, I'm not sure of the history of similar agreements. I just think if you say we don't want Ukraine in NATO, which I think is understandable, I don't think Ukraine is going to go in NATO, but we're going to defend it if attacked, well, then it's de facto a NATO member. So why don't you just put it in NATO at that point? So it doesn't make sense to me. Again, if the Europeans want to send troops there as a tripwire, fine. But they're saying they're not going to send them as a tripwire unless we're committed to defending them if the worst comes to shove when they're the tripwire, which comes back to our guarantees. It seems unlikely. I'm not sure it's in our interest, and it seems unlikely this president is ever going to want to do that.
And how much of this, Rich Lowry, editor of the National Review, is frustration from Trump with the Europeans? I mean, they just – and then all their leaders put out these tweets about supporting Ukraine. When they haven't, I mean, they're a pimple on the butt compared to what we paid into this whole deal, Rich. And I think that annoys Trump as much as anything.
It does, and it's not the worst outcome here if the Europeans just step up and begin to do more, which the last couple of weeks they have great urgency to do. All of a sudden, that would have been better, at the outset. It would have been better if Angela Merkel was never Chancellor of Germany and had this idiotic attitude to Russia, where they're going to become highly dependent on their natural gas and all the rest of it, which Trump warned them against at the time. The thing is, at the end of the day, they can't support Ukraine really holding the line against Russia. Without us, they can keep their current level of effort for some period of time, the Ukrainians. I think the Wall Street Journal had 6 months or something, but they're not going to win a war of attrition against Russia. I don't think they're winning it regardless. They're not winning it without our support. Mm-hmm. So it's really time to figure out a deal that works.
Last thing, Rich, what do you make of just Trump's handling of Putin in general, and what you think the long-term goal and plan is there to keep him in check?
Well, I hope there is a long-term goal to keep him in check, but clearly his approach is one. He kind of has contempt for the small, the underdog. He just doesn't consider Zelenskyy a real leader the way he does Putin, because Putin is a president of a major power that has nuclear weapons. One, and two, if he thinks you might be the if you're have some serious national strength and he wants to deal with you, it tends to be, I'm not going to offend you, right? So we see this a little bit with Xi in China as well at the moment, but it's certainly been true of Putin. I think criticizing someone in public or on their war crimes or their dictatorial practices at home can be a form of pressure and can help get where you want to go. This is what Reagan did with Gorbachev. It's not as though Reagan stopped saying negative things about the Soviet Union. That was part of his leverage against the Soviet Union and against Gorbachev, but that's not Trump's approach.
Mm-hmm. Rich, thank you so much. It's obviously a busy Monday, and we are grateful for you fitting us in here on KCMO in Kansas City.
Absolutely.
Thanks
Sorry
so
about
much.
The Chiefs.
Sorry
about the Chiefs.
What? Who? Oh, hey man, as long as
if no one's a good quarterback if they have no protection.
Well,
right?
ain't that the truth?
Everyone
got to draft that line, and you're a Titans fan. I know you're not an Eagles fan, so we still love you, Rich. Thanks so much.
Yeah, there you go. All right. Take care.
All right. Have a great day. Rich Lowry does an awesome job with the National Review on KCMO 95.7 FM.